Is the Trump campaign falling on deaf ears? And what relief is coming for the 32 million unemployed Americans? It's time to get informed, America. Let's go.
You're listening to Get Informed, America, the only true unfiltered show that's fighting fake news and finding common ground. Now, here's your hosts, Dave Oakenquist and Rodney Johnson.
Hello and welcome to Get Informed, America, the show that breaks through the mainstream media box to bring you real smart news. Hi, I'm Dave Oakenquist, and joining me is, as always, the smartest, still remaining smartest man I know, Mr. Rodney Johnson, of course, the editor of InformedAmerican.com. Rodney, you still have the perch. There's not even an immediate challenger right now. You're still the smartest man I know by a long mile.
I don't think it says anything about me. I think it says you need more friends.
I do. I need to get out more, but I can't, Rodney, because there's nowhere to go. Here we are recapping and highlighting some of the most important things of the week. And we were talking before we got started. It was kind of a quiet week, but I think it's a good time to reassess or to give a state of the election, the state of the race where we are. There's a story here on Yahoo Finance, Rodney, that I read to our Facebook group yesterday, which is that coronavirus could cost Trump 100 electoral votes. And this comes by Moody's Analytics, which has reversed their position on the election. They came out back in February. They predicted that Trump would win with 336 electoral votes. And now, after facing the global pandemic, they now predict almost a flip-flop of the opposite, which is Biden now Biden is now favored. This isn't electoral. It's sort of an economic model, but it predicts Biden to win 4 of the 6 swing states. And then they have a high turnout model, which says Biden would take all of them. And of course, we saw that Quinnipiac poll seeing Trump lead by 15 points. I don't believe 15 points, but main point, handing it off to you, Rodney, is that things have certainly turned against the president after this pandemic, and he is now behind in this race.
Yeah, and I mean, you and I have been talking about this for a long time, and I've always been of the mind that Trump was in trouble since the day after he was elected. If the election in 2016 was held clearly on Tuesday the 7th and then held again on Wednesday the 8th, I think he would have lost on Wednesday the 8th because many people who didn't turn out in the swing states, who were perhaps not that impressed with Hillary Clinton but thought she was going to win anyway, I think they would have gone to the polls. And so I have always thought that his reelection chances were, hanging by a thread because there is that push. And in a lot of states, it doesn't really matter. Everybody knows how they're going to go. It does come down to those 6 states. And this has made it worse because one of the big things that Trump had going for him was the economy. And of course, now that's been taken away by the pandemic. And everybody says, well, gee, that's an outside event. They're always outside events. It's rare the person in power who says, hey, let's go torpedo this thing, right? It's just something that comes along, and how you deal with it is how you deal with it. So I think they're right, but I think it was questionable to begin with.
Now, we had the economy, Rodney. We had impeachment defeated. We're going to get Biden. Trump was going to storm around the country doing his rallies, and then when his mental health is clearly deteriorating, in my opinion. And then when the debates came, that would have been exposed. And then all of it, they might not even have a debate now. And I saw one of the demands from the Biden camp is for Trump to release his taxes as a condition of debating. So you can see where that's going. I don't think Biden is interested in a debate. I think he's just going to, and I think it was Terry McAuliffe who said, just do the basement strategy, and then you'll be fine. Because I don't think. I don't know. So you're saying is it too hard of a road to go through? This doesn't surprise you. So you weren't even thinking at the back of the impeachment and all that with the strong economy. Even then, you were saying it was gonna. He was behind even back in, say, I don't know, January,
back in the fall.
February?
We were talking about this back in the fall, and so I'm a numbers guy, and so I hear everything people say. I'm reading the news as to what people think. But then I'm looking at what people are doing. And so you go back to the 2018 election, the first time you had more people under 50 vote than people over 50 since they've been keeping records going back to about 1970. And you look at what the young people are asking for, and they're asking for a more liberal agenda. They just are. And if you look at how the political breakdown happens along age and male-female lines, young female voters are overwhelmingly liberal. They just are. And the numbers are like 72 to 36. I mean, it's crazy, the split. And it's the biggest by far. And with that group becoming more important in voting in general, it makes sense that you're going to see elections go that way. And then you go look at the states that are in play there, being, Wisconsin and Michigan and Ohio and Arizona and Pennsylvania and Florida. Guess what? Most of them had a bunch of young voters. And so that's the piece that Trump has not reached. And I didn't see him reaching them last fall. I still don't see him reaching them. That's why I thought he was in trouble before the pandemic ever happened.
Well, that leads me to where I was going next, which is two recent things coming out. One, the president did, I guess, I don't know if you want to call it a press conference or what, but it was about, he did this thing where he had a red truck and a blue truck and showed the weight of regulation on the blue truck and how, the red truck is lighter, basically showing he's been the deregulation president, and he's going to run on that. And there's another thing coming out of Rasmussen. You probably saw this too. It was that the 66% of likely voters say cutting taxes is a top issue for them in the upcoming presidential election. And of course, most believe that Biden will raise their taxes. Now, my point here is, you just made a point about numbers and skewing younger. They don't care. In other words, this election isn't going to be about regulation. It's not going to be about tax rates. These are almost just irrelevant points to why people are going to go into the voting booth and pull the lever for either one of these people.
Right. And so I'm going to get hate mail over this, obviously. I'm just telling people what I see here. It's, if you ask somebody who's 27 if they care about tax rates, they do, because they want them higher. Yeah. They want people who make more to be taxed at a higher rate. And if you ask them about regulation, they want more of it because they think that the detoothing of the EPA is a horrible thing. And so I hear that 66% say it's about taxes. Tell me about the people who are under 50 in these battleground states. Those are the ones that are going to decide this election. They've got to come out and then they got to vote. And so I think turnout is already going to happen. Then it's a question of how they vote. And so this whole national thing about tax rates doesn't really sway me as to who's going to win, because it's not about the national view of tax rates. It's about just these people in these states who are going to, push their election one way or the other.
I agree. But as a potential strategy, I saw Scott Adams. I know you know Scott, or not you know him, but you know of Scott. You're a fan
absolutely.
of his. Yeah.
I was a Dilbert fan long before he was doing his other political stuff, which I'm a fan of as well. So.
Right. Now his slogan would be 2020 jobs, not mobs. And I think that would be a potential winner, because this is, at the end of the day, it's not about, it's like I said, it's not about the, a marginal tax rate. It's not about, cutting regulation here or there, or even adding, or even more regulation. People aren't voting for that. It's a gut thing. And I think jobs, not mobs, kind of cuts to that could be maybe a central message, something like that. Maybe that because I think that might get people in the voting booth.
I think that slogan still skews older. And so, I mean, is that going to sway somebody who's 27 years old? And my immediate reaction is it doesn't rise to that level. So I have not seen the outreach from the Trump campaign to that young voter yet.
No, I haven't either. What do you think about apparently Kanye West announced and then didn't, and then I guess he actually did file the paperwork to be on the ballot. Could he get 1 or 2%? Oh
yeah. He could definitely get 1 or 2%. Could he get enough votes in these battleground states to sway the election? I don't know. It's a very interesting idea. Kanye West was, of course, a Trump supporter.
Right.
And has recently, I found religion isn't the word I'm looking for, because I don't know his religious affiliation before, but he's certainly turned his music and his attention in a more religious direction. And so he's interesting. I don't know enough about him to say that I want him to be the leader of my country. But it would be interesting to see him in the race. I don't expect him to be. His campaign strategist said that he was out because there's a huge organization you have to put on the ground in every state where you want to be competitive. And I just don't see him making that happen. So I do think he's out. As somebody wrote this morning, if Kanye West is running for president, then so is your mother, because there are over 1,400 people who are registered to run for president, and you haven't heard about any but 2 of them, most likely.
No, but at least he's the most famous. Yeah, so it definitely seems. I don't know what I don't want to call it a stunt, but it's certainly maybe it is a stunt.
Well, I mean, it's an activity with no chance of success. And so if the goal is to be president, it's a stunt. If the goal is to raise issues and to raise awareness about things, well, maybe not.
Yeah, absolutely. Rodney, I got a couple of more things here. One is this issue of as the U.S. Looks like it could be reversing course on opening up the economy and maybe heading back to some lockdowns. We saw California doing that. There was some reports that that may happen in your home state of Texas. Here in Florida, things are still open, thankfully, but the only real caveat to that is you just have to wear a mask anywhere you go inside, which really isn't that big of a deal. It's just fine. There is that issue of Sweden, Rodney, and they basically didn't shut down their economy. They did some things to protect some of the older folks and shut down some schools. Other than that, most of the stuff was open. Now their death rates were higher, but in comparison, I want to show this graph here. So death rates per million, Rodney. New Jersey, 1,700. New York, 1,600. UK, 6. And then here we are, Sweden, down below the UK, Spain, Italy, ahead of France, ahead of the United States. And then, of course, Florida, the demon state, the worst state in the world, just 205. California, totally fine at 180. And, of course, Texas, saving grace for you, Rodney, just 115, which is really, really low. But, looking at this, it does make me think, did we do the right thing? And at the end of the day, we could have just kept this thing rolling. And in other words, I guess there's an outstanding question of whether lockdowns really even work. I mean, does this thing just end up transmitting itself regardless of what you do? It's just a matter of protecting the most vulnerable.
Well, I mean, as we've talked about, it's flattening the curve of the use of the healthcare system. Deaths in Texas are quite low, but we have a very young population. And so if you go down to the Valley, which is the area right off of the Rio Grande down there at the southern tip of Texas, it's called the Valley. A lot of agriculture down there, a lot of immigrant workers legally coming over and, do work and then go back to Mexico. And so they are experiencing an incredible rise in COVID infections, and their hospital beds are full. They're not dying because they are younger, they are healthier, those sorts of things, but they're still taking up the healthcare facilities. And so that's the problem. They're having ER waits anywhere from 4 to 11 hours. And as they say, the only way you get a bed is if somebody dies. And they're starting to reach out to see where they can send people. The problem is there's not much around the Valley. And so they're having to send people by ambulance hours away just to get into a hospital bed. And so that's the problem. Sweden's interesting to me. One, their death rate is much higher than the nations around them. And so by that standpoint, it didn't work.
Yeah.
They didn't shut down from a government level, but they told people what they wanted to have happen, and people complied. And so people self-censored. They did what the government said without the government having to institute a law or a regulation. And so that really helped a lot. The question is, when they come out the other side, yes, their economy dropped just like everybody else's because they did this self-censoring. But do they come back faster and not get that second wave? We're still in the first wave. And so we still won't know if Sweden did this better than the neighboring countries over there until we get into late fall and even 2021 to see how this shakes out with the next round. And, if they essentially have established some level of herd immunity, then, they will have done this correctly, but you can't know till then.
Well, that is interesting because as you sort of walk through your example in Texas, every place is unique, right? And so any policy, there really is no way of knowing. I mean, in other words, Sweden, they had an open economy, they had a lot of deaths, but they didn't have a large migrant population coming in across their border that I know of. So just like what you have in South Texas with people coming across the border, that's a totally different situation. And a lot of people get infected, and then hopefully, if they're, like, as you said, since they're young enough, hopefully they won't die. But that's not the same case not even in a different place in the country. So
right, in Florida. And to the point, I'm not saying that the immigrants from Mexico came over and infected people. I mean, there are laws right now against regulations in place against non-essential travel over the border and things. And so my point is that we have a lot of young people already here who are working. And a lot of people who live in close quarters and multi-generational homes who are much more susceptible to transmitting it, but not necessarily to succumbing to it. And so that's the point.
Right. But Texas didn't shut down seasonal workers. They're
Nope.
allowing.
Well, you've got to pick the food. I mean,
Yeah.
the rest of the nation is pretty sure they want us to pick the food because we all want to eat. And so, there's something to that essential worker thing where you let people still go out and pick food and deal with cows and all the things you got to do to get stuff in grocery stores.
Yeah, absolutely. Rodney, one thing, White House I saw this morning, White House weighs TikTok ban as worries about Chinese government infiltration and violating the privacy of children. Of course, Rodney, do you use the TikTok app? Do you make TikTok videos?
I do not use the TikTok app. I don't count myself as a conspiracy theorist, but I will tell you that I think the government watches a lot more than they tell us. And I believe the Chinese government watches everything they possibly can.
Right.
I don't believe a word they say. And even when their words are, we're watching you, I think that's a lie. I think they're watching you like inside your house, if possible, right? Through your camera on your iPhone and your computer. And so to say that the Chinese government is somehow using TikTok to collect information, totally believe that. I mean, I think it would be silly otherwise. Remember, this is a nation that watches their population walking across the street. And if you have a jaywalking ticket outstanding, they'll flash your picture on a billboard so that everybody knows. I mean, this is a social shaming nation. And to do that, you have to have granular data on people. And that's what they're about.
That's great stuff. That's a Minority Report kind of stuff there. So, I mean, do you think this will happen? Do you think we'll and I mean, the demand for an app like TikTok is high. So I would imagine I mean, this isn't that complicated, right? You just get an American equivalent if you shut down TikTok, or am I seeing this wrong?
Well, the shutdown on TikTok, I believe, is for particular units like government phones. And some companies have said, hey, don't put TikTok on this company issued phone. To tell Americans, me and you personally, that we can't put it on our phone, I don't think that's going to work. That would require that the app store provider, Google for Android or Apple, take it out of there. That's a big deal.
That's the very thing on a Financial Times article. Sorry, yeah, that is actually what it would be. The app would have to remove it from his App Store, Google from the Play Store, and if you wanted it, your 12-year-old kid would have to find another way to get an unauthorized app because
which they would, and if the 12-year-old couldn't do it, they would go to a 9-year-old, and the 9-year-old could do it.
Yeah. And hand it to the baby if you can't figure it out.
Yep.
That does it for the news of this week, but something to keep in mind looking ahead to next week, Rodney. You got a story here on informedamerican.com. 32 million Americans receiving some form of unemployment benefit, and those benefits are about to run out, Rodney. But we could see some action on that next week, right?
Yeah, it's not the main benefits don't run out because the government extended to 39 weeks with the first CARES Act piece, and so unemployment benefits really go for 2/3 of the year longer. It's the $600 per week federal unemployment bonus check. That's what runs out on July 31. Now, with that being said, Congress is going to do something because we still have, by last measure, 11.1 million people unemployed. I think it's more than that. The number of people collecting some form of unemployment at 32 million, that's 20% of the workforce. And so clearly there's a lot of people unemployed. And I don't think we're just going to watch their income drop off that cliff like that. And so I expect some movement from Congress. And you know what? You and I talked about it, 6-7 weeks ago. There's mention in the paper of Mitch McConnell saying, hey, we need some sort of liability protection for schools and businesses and others so they're not sued when somebody gets COVID in their establishment. That's coming right back up, and it's going to be the trade. You want some money for cities and states, and you want extended unemployment? Well, we want this liability protection, and it's exactly what we talked about.
Yep, makes sense. I think that's a good path forward. Hopefully, they can find a compromise and quickly. Rodney, we want everyone to go to informedamerican.com. You are the editor of the site, and I was putting up great stories, great content, real smart news. When people head on over there, they can subscribe to their email. They get stories in their inbox every single day. What kind of stuff can they anticipate seeing over the next couple of days before you and I meet next Friday?
Well, there's a couple of things percolating. One of them is the police forces that are, under fire right now. Not literally, but like in New York, where they're defunding from $6 billion down to $5 billion. That's a big cut in their budget, and they're seeing a dramatic drop in arrests and, amazingly, a dramatic increase in shootings. And so people are saying, well, it may be as a work slowdown or whatever. I think it's what you saw in Baltimore after the Freddie Gray case, where a lot of officers look at it and say, you know what? I'm not going to get close to a situation because somebody's got a phone video and I might get called out for doing something wrong, whether I was or it was a, heat of the moment. And so I think you're seeing in these larger police forces, you're seeing the police officers say, I'm not going to do anything that's close to the line because I might get blamed for something. And so that's going to be interesting to watch how that develops over the summer because, of course, crime in the warmer months increases. And the other thing is we're starting to hear more about reparations. The city of Asheville, North Carolina, just passed some sort of regulation that they're going to do more for opportunities for the Black community, for housing ownership and other things as a method of reparations. I believe Oprah Winfrey bought the rights or is involved with the rights to make the 1619 Project into a movie. And so I don't know if it's going to happen next week, but this is coming.
Yep, absolutely. And of course, you all can become informed Americans by subscribing to this channel. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. For Rodney Johnson, I'm Dave Oakenquist telling you to get informed, America.
You've been listening to Get Informed, America, brought to you by the Informed American Radio Network. Please like and subscribe today in order to get new exclusive weekly episodes. Any questions, thoughts, or comments can be sent directly to info@informedamerican.com. And don't forget to visit informedamerican.com to keep up with real, smart news. Until next time, fight fake news and find common ground.